Hey everybody, this is Mark at Dice Monkey, and today we're going to talk about the history of Star Wars RPGs. This is a deep passion of mine because it is the very first role playing game that I ever played, and also the very first role playing game that I ever DM'd in GM'd in two different editions, which we'll get into. So, West End Games was the first company. They started in 1987, started publishing the role playing game. It is the D6 system. So you're going to hear a lot about the D6 system from everybody. It's a nice, simple system. It's really straightforward. It's just rolling a bunch of dice and then trying to roll higher than the target number to higher than the opponent. Very, very simple. But it was pivotal in expanding the Star Wars universe. A lot of the stuff from Timothy Zahn and other authors in the expanded universe actually came from source books from West End Games. This was the first game that I ever played in. I used the templates, so they have sort of pre-made characters that you still have to fill in the skills on how you want it. So I used one of the pre-made templates and got going, and I still play that character today. I absolutely love this system. I own so many books for it, and it's just really fantastic. They produced source books that were used in novels and other media. The guides are really, really extensive. There's an entire operations guide to the Death Star, and it is really detailed. So it's really great. There was 3 different versions of it. Technically 4, which we'll get into. So it was simple, accessible, and focused on storytelling and action. You got to play as smugglers, Jedi, all kinds of other archetypes. And then the adventures spanned all over the galaxy. It was pretty great because basically anything you wanted to play, you could play. If you wanted to play a bunch of X-Wing pilots, you could do that. If you wanted to do some political intrigue, you could do that. There was continual revisions. So there was first edition, which is that first image you see there. Then there was the second edition, which is the image you see there. And then there was revised and expanded, that was the version that I played. And then fans have come out with since the revised, expanded, and updated re-up, they call it. And that one is a big, thick book that basically doesn't change any of the rules. It fixes any typos, any slight errors there may have been in the mechanics. And then it adds in mechanics from all these other source books that had little sort of extra little bits and pieces of the game that are all collected in one place, which is nice. Then in 2000, Wizards of the Coast got the license, and they released the D20 system version, which is connected to 3rd edition D&D. It came out roughly the same time as 3rd edition D&D. It uses a lot of the same stuff. There's a few slight tweaks, splitting your wounds between your wounds and your vitality. Your wounds always match whatever your constitution score is, and then your vitality is actually what ends up expanding. And the great thing is because it was the D20 system, it was really familiar to D&D players, introducing classes, levels, tactical combat, things like that. I have a bunch of those books back here as well, and it was a really great system. I really enjoyed it. This was the first role-playing game I ran, so I ran this game for years and years and years. There was also mini editions of it. So you had first edition, which came out again in 2000, so it was right around the time of episode 1. So a lot of stuff was heavily focused on episode 1. There was a whole starter adventure where you actually are fighting on Naboo. There was the revised edition that came out after the second film came out, episode 2. So that began to expand a little things. It streamlined some of the rules. It expanded some of the options. But it was still essentially the same game. You could use stuff from the core rulebook in the revised core rulebook. The first edition was based on 3.0, so this one was based on 3.5. So they modified and tweaked some of the things. And then Saga Edition was a major overhaul. It simplified the mechanics for fast-paced action, and it kind of was set up to be a sort of prototype for 4th edition. There's a lot of 4th edition feeling in there. It's very, very different. You can't really use the previous system. Like, you can use parts of them, but you can't use them as much as you could between the first and revised edition. But it was another really fantastic one. It was a lot of fun. Very, very dynamic. And then in 2012, Fantasy Flight ended up taking over and came out with 3 distinct Star Wars RPGs. There was Edge of the Empire, which focuses on like the scum and villainy, the fringes of the galaxy. You have Age of Rebellion. That was the Rebel Alliance versus Galactic Empire. And then you had Force and Destiny, all focused on the Force, Jedi, and Sith. Each of these is all the exact same system. It's just they have different focuses. And if they tried to put all of these things into one giant book, the book would be, more than 1,000 pages. There's tons of different classes for each one of these, so trying to pare that down would have been pretty difficult. So they have 3 different ones, and then over the years they've also come out with different supplements that are useful for all of them, like a ship supplement, one all about the Clone Wars, things like that. So you can use all of these interchangeably, and in fact I have in a lot of cases, but it uses the narrative dice system, which is unique to Fantasy Flight, and this is the system that the Genesis system, it evolved into the Genesis system. So it uses the exact same mechanics as Genesis. You're rolling certain colored dice depending on your advantages and disadvantages. Certain situations will give you certain colored dice, which is kind of nice because you can sort of see how the dice fall, how the different advantages and disadvantages end up helping or harming you. This is also the same system that Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 3rd edition ended up using, that Fantasy Flight had. They did that before this, so this is more of a refined version of that system that Warhammer Fantasy did. But it makes sessions really, really dynamic. There's some really interesting stuff you can do with these narrative dice. So the impact on the Star Wars universe is massive. Like I said, they ended up influencing a ton of the different expanded universe stuff. You can see a bunch of stuff from the role-playing games start showing up in the TV shows even. Like a couple of the different templates that you see in the D6 system do end up showing up as characters in Rebels, which is pretty cool. And they remain a massive part of the Star Wars extended universe. You can always, even if you don't play the games, go back and use these as source books to learn more about the Star Wars universe. Star Wars RPGs offer a massive, rich, varied experience, wielding blasters and lightsabers, piloting starfighters, navigating the Galactic Senate. I have run games of all kinds with the Star Wars role-playing game. There's pretty much no genre that's you couldn't play Star Wars in that genre. That's one thing I really, really love about it, is that like you can go as like low fantasy as you want and go really, really basic without any kind of magnificent stuff, or go like super, super spiritual, sending your Star Wars characters on like mental journeys that end up defying possibility. It's really, really cool. So Star Wars RPGs allow fans to create their own adventures. I've experienced so many different stories that feel like they're canon, personally. I absolutely love getting to explore that universe and creating my own stories. And then the evolution of the games mirrors the excitement of the saga itself. As the saga has expanded and changed, we've watched the game expand and change in different ways. Like a very basic, simple system with the original trilogy, and then once you're getting into the prequels, you've got the bit more complex. It's adding layers to it with the D20 system, and then sort of going all out with Fantasy Flight. And hopefully we're going to see some future expansions and innovations. Haven't really heard much from Edge Studios as to what they're planning on doing with the Star Wars role-playing game. I'm hoping that they're going to expand more. Edge Studios now owns the Fantasy Flight version of the rules, so we'll see how it goes. But I really want to thank everybody for tuning in and watching, and I will see you next time.